If you bought a house in Japan, inherited one, or you're even thinking about buying an IKEA, there's a good chance the rules have changed under your feet in the last few years. And I'm not talking about small stuff, I'm talking about a new law that can fine you for not updating your address on a property title, a complete rewrite of how condo buildings vote on renovations, and a construction rule change that just made permits mandatory for houses that never needed them before. So today, I'm breaking down the 5 biggest legal changes in Japanese real estate law between 2022 and 2026, what changed, why it matters, and what you actually need to do about it. Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I help people buy, renovate, and hold on to property in Japan, from IKEA in the countryside to condos in the city. And one thing I hear constantly from this community is, I didn't even know that law existed until it bit me. So I went through every major real estate related legal change from 2022 through 2026. This is the stuff Japanese real estate agents actually have to study for their licensing exam, and I pulled out the 5 that matter most if you own or want to own property here. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice, and property law always has exceptions. So for anything that affects your specific situation, talk to a licensed judicial scrivener or real estate attorney. But this will get you 90% of the way to understanding what's changed. Let's get into it. Change number 1, and honestly the biggest one, registering inherited property is no longer optional. For decades in Japan, if you inherited a house or land, you technically didn't have to update the registry to put it in your name. A lot of people just didn't. That's a huge reason Japan has so many IKEA and so much ownership in owned land. Nobody updated the paperwork for 2 or 3 generations, and now there are 10 heirs who don't even know they were heirs. As of April 2024, that changed. If you inherit real estate, you now have 3 years from the date you knew about the inheritance to register the transfer. Miss that window without a valid reason, and you're looking at a fine of up to 100,000 yen. And this isn't just forward looking, it applies retroactively to property you already inherited before the law existed, with a grace period. Why this matters to you: if you're buying property from someone who inherited it, or if you've inherited property in Japan and have been putting off the paperwork, this is no longer a someday task. There's now a legal clock running. Change number 2 is the sequel to change number 1, and it kicks in April 2026. If your name or address changes after you're already the registered owner, you now have 2 years to update that on the title too. Miss it, and the fine is up to 50,000 yen. Think about how many foreign owners this affects. You buy a place, you register it under your name and your address at the time, and then you move. Maybe you move within Japan, maybe you move back to your home country. Under the old system, nobody was really checking. Under the new system, that outdated address on your registry is now a compliance problem. There is a silver lining here. The government is also rolling out a smart update system that can auto-update your address using data from other government databases. So in theory, you won't always have to file this manually. But don't count on that covering every case, especially for overseas addresses. If you own property here and you've moved, put update my registered address on your to-do list. Change number 3 is for anyone who owns or is considering buying a unit in a Japanese condo building, what's called a mansion here. Here's the problem this law is solving: to renovate common areas, or in extreme cases to rebuild an aging building, condo associations needed a vote from a majority, or in some cases 3/4 or 4/5 of all registered owners, not just the ones who show up to the meeting, all of them. And in an aging building where some owners have died, moved overseas, or just vanished off the radar, getting that many responses was nearly impossible. Buildings were stuck in limbo, too old to be safe, too illegally frozen to fix. As of April 2026, that's changed. For most standard votes, the requirement is now a majority of owners who actually attend the meeting, not a majority of everyone on paper. And there's a formal process to legally exclude owners the association can prove are unreachable, so they stop blocking the vote entirely. On top of that, votes for accessibility upgrades and earthquake retrofitting got easier too, down to 2/3 instead of 3/4, and rebuild votes for buildings that are certified as needing replacement dropped from a 5/5 requirement to 3/4 in qualifying cases. If you're buying into an older mansion, this is genuinely good news. It means the building has a real, legal path to modernize instead of just slowly decaying because of one missing signature from an owner nobody can find. Change number 4 is huge if you're renovating an IKEA, and it's the one I see catching people off guard the most. Until 2025, small wooden houses, two-story homes, or single-story homes got what's called the forgo exemption. Basically, if a licensed architect signed off on the design, the structural review got skipped entirely during the building confirmation process. That exemption is a big reason renovation projects in Japan could move relatively fast. As of April 2025, that exemption shrank dramatically. Now, in every region of Japan, not just designated planning zones, two-story wooden houses and single-story houses over 200 square meters need a full building confirmation and inspection. The structural review is no longer optional, even with an architect's sign-off. Only small, single-story houses under 200 square meters in designated city planning zones still get the streamlined process. Why this matters? If your IKEA renovation plan involves anything structural, adding a second floor, major reinforcement, changing the layout, budget more time and more paperwork than you might have a year or two ago. This is exactly the kind of change that blindsides a foreign buyer who read an old blog post about how easy Japanese renovation permits are. Last one is really a bundle of smaller wins, but they add up. Since 2022, Japan has been steadily killing the Hanko stamp and the stack of paper in real estate transactions. Real estate agents no longer need a physical seal on your explanation of important matters document or your final contract. With your consent, both can now be delivered electronically. Online video explanations of the property, which used to only be allowed for rentals, are now standard for purchases too. That means if you're buying from overseas or you simply can't be in Japan for closing, remote and digital transactions are far more realistic today than they were in 2021. And a few numbers worth knowing if you're budgeting a purchase. The real estate acquisition tax exemption threshold for new homes has been relaxed. The minimum floor space requirement dropped from 50 square meters to 40 in most of the country, and the tax-free thresholds for small transactions, where the tax is so low it's waived entirely, were raised across the board in 2026, roughly by 40 to 180%, depending on the category. None of these alone are headline news, but together, they add up to a real estate process that's faster, more remote friendly, and slightly cheaper at the margins than it was 3 years ago.